Welcome to the Sabbath Life podcast. This is a space where we share stories about the Abbey of the Heights and the Christian contemplative traditions and rhythms of life that make us more human and friends with time. I'm Peter White. I'm one of the hosts of the Abbey of the Heights, a Christian retreat space in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And today I'm joined by my friends Bethany and John Arndt. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves and share a little bit about the work that you guys are involved in?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, my name is Bethany. I really am engaged in a lot of different ways of soul care and spiritual formation for others. One of those ways is I do offer spiritual direction. I offer counseling, retreats, teachings. We have a variety of different things that we engage in kind of together and separately.
Yeah. And I'm John Arndt. I am a spiritual director and coach and writer. And yeah, probably really invested in not only spiritual direction for folks, but also spiritual formation. Bethany and I have involved in our local church in that, and we've partnered with other organizations over the years, like Youth with a Mission, YWAM, or All Nations 24/7, different organizations as we just care for people and want to see people formed by Christ. So, yeah.
So when I was thinking of people I wanted to talk to in this space, you were folks that came to mind because in part, I remember I trained as a spiritual director probably about 15 years ago. And then at the time, I could not find anybody else here in the Tulsa area that had any idea what in the world I was talking about when I talked about spiritual direction. Uh, and so to at a certain point, a number of years ago, come across you all and develop a friendship with you all that was a great space for camaraderie and friendship, and knowing that I was not the crazy person around here, but that I had people to share this with. And then also, when we started the Abbey 5 years ago, you all were among some of our very first cheerleaders and advocates and people that were sharing everything that we were doing and helping us get the word out. So I would love to start maybe from a place of like, could you share some about your individual journeys into spiritual direction, how you discovered it, how it came on your radar screen, and then what led you to want to be trained as directors yourselves?
Yeah. I'll dive in. I'll take that bait. That's easy bait to go after. I love talking about this stuff. Yeah. At the time that I first found out about spiritual direction, Bethany and I lived in South Africa, and we were part of a nonprofit there that helped people start their spiritual journey and help them kind of start house churches, and really we're focused on what does it look like to follow Jesus and be disciples of the Lord and grow. And I just became, I was involved in leadership in several different capacities, and was kind of just really impacted at the ways which I saw leadership not lived out well versus leadership that was really beautiful and honoring and created space for people to bring their gifts and graces and their skills and their desires into the mix. And so I began exploring different ways of caring for people and leading them and meeting with them, and really kind of became just a lot more curious. And instead of like running into a conversation with my agenda and what I think that they need to take away from this, I began exploring what does it look like to pause my agenda and ask them questions and kind of look for the treasure in their life. While I was doing that and kind of shifting the ways that I thought what might healthy leadership look like, I began taking a master's in Christian formation course. And in that, one of my teachers and advisors that was watching me kind of wrestle with some of this stuff around leadership and asking people questions and coaching them instead of just kind of demanding things or telling them what I believe and think. So as she was watching me do this, she said, you might really be interested in something that I'm studying. She was training to be a spiritual director, and she's like, I feel like this is right up your alley. So I had never heard of this before. And she, this British woman just said, check out this book. I think the first book she gave me was Margaret Gunther's Holy Listening, which is now still 10 years later, my absolute favorite book about spiritual direction. It So that was kind of my entrance, was someone adding fuel to the fire of what God was sort of already doing in me. And as I'm reading, and then I started collecting other books and reading, I was like, oh, I think I'm kind of doing some of this. Not all of it, definitely not all of it. But when I'm meeting with someone for coffee for an hour, a good 15 or 20 minutes of my time, I was already kind of trying to do what I was reading these authors talking about, and just was fascinated. Like, wow, what if I actually didn't fall into this, but like, what if I actually tried? And what if I actually attempted to create some space that someone could process their really difficult journey, really difficult situations with conflict or financial unsustainability, or learning how to deal with life in a different culture, and going, where is God? And not knowing who to talk about it with, because I'm a missionary and I should look like my life's all together and all this. And so I just recognized, oh, what if these folks who are really struggling actually had safe space to process hard questions, and someone that could help them ask, like, where's God at in this? So that was kind of how I fell into this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, how
So
about you, Bethany?
I was kind of on a different page as far as John experiencing some of this introductory stuff to spiritual direction. Kind of simultaneously, I was in this really difficult season of, engaging in ministry, social work, missions, and experiencing severe illness. And so I actually had about 5 years where I was extremely ill and my life changed dramatically. And I kind of was going through, in the spiritual direction realm, we would call it desolation, really intensive desolation and loss and trauma. And I was simultaneously, and some might say ironically, but I would say probably very intentionally, experiencing very rich and immersive consolation from Jesus. So, like, my life's falling apart in some senses, but I'm feeling very deeply companioned by the Holy Spirit in the midst of all of this. And I kind of went through a pretty long season of formation, and I would call it reformation, unwiring, untangling of beliefs, of identity, of practices, of how I practice my faith in so many different ways. I was kind of forced into a season of silence and solitude without originally even knowing that that was a thing that, spiritual directors teach and lead people through and practice. I was engaging in that without realizing that, oh, this is something that we all should actually experience. uh, so I was kind of having like this formational, rich, deeply difficult season while John's exploring all this stuff. And then we fast forward a few years, and he's like, I'm thinking about doing this spiritual direction training program. What do you think about it? So then I was kind of looking into it as well, thinking, you know what? I feel like this is so relevant to so many of the things that I've gone through with the Lord and want to learn more about and want to dig in further. And it really paired well with both of our assignments that we've had, and we've done this in very different ways, is really coming alongside of people and empathetically showing up with them and supporting them in whatever spaces and places that they find themselves in. So it really paired well. And we ended up doing a training that was actually a program that was based in Spain, but we kind of did it remotely, and a 2-year experience. And that was almost 5 years ago. We've both been practicing spiritual direction ever since. And really, I don't want to speak for you, but deeply enjoying it.
Mhm. How would you say that your experience of then being trained as a spiritual director, like, formed you or changed you?
For me,
I suppose you could answer for each other if you really wanted to.
let's see how well we know each other.
Yeah.
Being a spiritual director has changed me in, quite a few different ways. I've learned to be very relaxed and comfortable with other people's questions, with uncertainty, with other people's, pain, emotion. uh, the disclosure of their trauma is actually formed me to be able to really companion them in the midst of it in a very kind of restful way. I know with my practice of spiritual direction, the metaphor I get is just like a river. Like you're going with the flow of the river. And that has, because I'm offering this on a day-to-day basis multiple times per day to people, I feel like I'm able to like float in this river in the rest of my life. Meaning there's like a restful nature to living with God and enjoying him. And that's really shaped who I am and what I do.
Mm.
Yeah, I would say that some of the favorite people that I feel like God trusts me to be with in this ministry is people who feel maybe disillusioned with the church or institutions they grew up in and are just kind of wild-hearted, spiritually restless, maybe deconstructing or have deconstructed and have rebuilt some theology around the Lord that seems really healthy for them, and but don't maybe have a lot of places to talk about it, or don't know what to do with, their theology of suffering and their hope for miracles or anything. And so I just love, I think that's some of my favorite people to meet with. And I think what it's done is it's shaped me to be a lot more comfortable with uncertainty and someone's pain. I'm not able to fix it. I'm not able to take it away. And so to be with them in empathy and wonder where the Lord is and what he might be up to, but also to not try to step over the bounds of that. And it's trained me to be relaxed. I think, that restful idea Bethany's talking about has really impacted me as well. I don't have to come up with like the book recommendation or the curriculum that they need to plug in to change their life. I get to know, as I meet with them, this is meeting a need. And as they meet with me, they're being trained, that God has compassion, just like the look of compassion on my face. And God wants to know what they're struggling with, just like I want to know. And so I think it's trained me to kind of hold that space a little bit more with more grace and understanding, and also kind of delight, even in hard stuff, that like, hey, the fact that we're sensing God's presence with us, or the fact that he is meeting someone in some of their desolation or their wilderness experience. Yeah, it's making it easy for me to see the Lord meet me in those experiences as well. And in the wildernesses that I go through, that yeah, the words come back to haunt me. Something that a directee has said, I'm like, oh, I needed that. Like days later, weeks later, I'm like, oh man. Or a word someone says, I'm like, I think I need to write a poem around that word. Like that's a beautiful, like
Mm.
just, I think it's really shaped my imagination with the Lord.
Mm.
And I want to piggyback on that. One of the things that is such a gift in the spiritual direction space, at least for me, is after each session, sometimes I'll kind of do an examine about where God was showing up in our conversation. Lord, show me what parts of this were you. And I will then add on to that, because during the session, of course, I'm very much focused on them. I'm not really doing any of my own processing. I'm being attuned and present to them. But then afterwards, I can go back and explore, okay, what in that was for me? And
Mm.
inevitably, there's always something that the Holy Spirit's inviting me into, wanting me to notice, or wanting to explore with me that actually was also for me and not just them. So there's almost like this feast banqueting table every day in many ways through this ministry for myself personally.
I like that. Like you just use the word of explore. So I like that idea of like that the Holy Spirit explores with us in this
Mm,
work. And
yeah.
John, I also heard you use the words empathy and wonder. And I love those words for spiritual direction too. Why does spiritual direction matter so much to you in the way that it does? And then to piggyback that question, why do you think spiritual direction matters so much to the world right now?
I
We
mean,
both took our breath at the same time.
yeah, we did take a breath at the same time. Unity. I feel like, not to get too meta, but I'm thinking about, my first thought is Henry Nouwen talking in, I want to, I want to say the book, the Beloved. Anyway, he has a book that he wrote like 40 or 50 years ago, 40 years ago, that describes the end of the like nuclear age where everything felt safe, and the threat of nuclear war, the post kind of, now we have distrust of our government, distrust of the forces around us. So I feel like a lot of that has filtered into even our faith experiences in a place like not just America, but I mean, we see people all over the world. I see people in Asia and Africa and Middle East. And, it's not like in the 50s where like you had one single sort of religious authority in your life, a pastor or a priest that you could just sort of depend no matter what they say, it's fine. Every week, new allegations and exposure of some rot at the heart of people that we would have thought we need to look up to and model our life after. We see this. And so I think that a lot of that sort of has trickled down into most people's faith experience. So there can be sort of a question of like, who can I trust? What can I trust? And so I think that for me, the practice of spiritual direction, whether I'm talking to a spiritual director of my own or I'm caring for someone who's a spiritual directee, I think that there's no stage here. There's no stage in the room. It's more conversational. It's often talking about contemplative practices like silence and stillness, simplicity, um, fasting, feasting, these stuff, instead of like, we need to go change the world with our mission that will expand the borders of our churches that, beyond anything we've ever seen. It's changed the nature of the conversation from kind of like bigger is better towards quality of soil, what's being grown in your life, what's the fruit of what's happening in this wilderness or in this delightful garden you're experiencing with the Lord. So I think that the mistrust of like institutions has made people long for space that doesn't feel institutional, and it feels conversational, and it feels centered around presence instead of transactions like what can you give me or what can you make of me kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I would add to that. They have, I kind of have this idea around some of my understanding of what the meaning and the purpose of the Christian life is. For me, is growth in our union and our unity with God, much
Mm.
like the metaphors he gives of bride and a groom. Like the whole intention of our life with God is for there to be loving connection. And so many people that I sit with, their intention and their faith life isn't always loving connection with Jesus. So in the spiritual direction space, part of the flavor of what I offer often is creating experiences that are joy filled and that are intimate and connected to Jesus. Like in that moment, we have lots of prayerful pauses. I have a real emphasis sometimes on if seems like what people are needing is helping them develop secure attachment with God, which is
Mm.
really kind of the basis of being firmly rooted and established in love, like Ephesians talks about. And so for me, the spiritual direction space is an opportunity where people can actually deepen their attachment to God and grow into unity with Him. Um, in those spaces where that maybe are hard or maybe that are joyful, nevertheless, there's always opportunity for us to more deeply root into what He's offering and who He is, right?
Mm.
Mm. Mm.
Hey,
That's
Peter,
so
you
good.
you you pointed out the words wonder and maybe even curiosity earlier. How do you feel like wonder has impacted your faith experience since you discovered spiritual direction?
Wonder. My 12-year-old daughter has developed this habit just recently of just announcing at the dinner table, "Hey, wonder," and then we'll follow it up with something like super ridiculous, and it so annoys our son that she's doing this. But I I love this idea that she's wondering because we don't always. I don't know if I've always found that to be cultivated in church spaces where maybe there was a value on certainty of that things are this way or we believe these things. And there's definitely place for creeds and have having assurance in what we know and believe, but also this ability to be comfortable in mystery has been such a gift to me in my own spiritual life. And so not having to know all the answers, but to trust that I'm held in the love of God and that the Holy Spirit is guiding me, and I don't have to know, where this is going or what the end is, but to believe in that goodness and trust in that goodness that I'm being held well. Yeah, I don't think I've always been in that space, but this has certainly helped me kind of cultivate that inside. Yeah, yeah. Well, tell me about your experience of the Abbey of the Heights. How did this come on your radar screen, and what is it that you yourselves have experienced here in this space?
One of the things that I have had the opportunity to enjoy about the Abbey of the Heights is just the actual gathering space that you guys provide. So I have not ever personally stayed there, but I have actually hosted a variety of different gatherings. So, at one point I got all the spiritual directors in Tulsa together for us to just meet each other and network. Peter, of course, you were a part of that. So you offered the space, which was just amazing to connect. It feels like there's as I don't know if it's part of your objective. I imagine it is to allow space for people to have community and to connect and to gather. And that's what
Mm.
the Abbey has been for me. I work with another organization business called Olive Tree Mediation. And so we offered a peacemaking training for faith leaders and we're able to have it at the Abbey of the Heights. So it was just like this perfect space that's not at a church, that's kind of a neutral space that people know about and can come enjoy. And I've been a part of several other gatherings there as well. It's been it's warm, it's spacious, so there's enough space for like not a huge group, but like a medium-sized group. There's space for hospitality, of course, with the kitchen. It checks all the boxes if you need to host something or gather people, really. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something about the Abbey where it's kind of my charismaniac roots would say there's an anointing there. And I feel like the anointing is for, when you step on the grounds, silence and stillness feel non threatening in that space. It feels comfortable and warm. So you can sit on the front porch, you can wander through the gardens in the back, you can be alone in a room, which I've done several times and gotten to not just have overnight retreats, but even just day long, experiences. I got to write part of a book there and got quiet, reflective space. Like there's just something about the atmosphere where it is like an interruption, like you're stepping off the crazy highway of life and you're stepping into this bubble of just quiet, reflective space. And yeah, had the amazing honor of like being a part of multiple group experiences, leading people to connect with Jesus and care for each other in different ways. So I feel like it definitely lends itself to activity and group stuff. But I think that my favorite thing about it is when you are there and even when you see other people who are staying there, there's sort of kind of like a warm recognition of someone on their journey, but there's not a compulsion of like, okay, now I got to sit and like do 20 questions and find out all about their life. You could do that if it felt right and they felt open, but also you can kind of be like ships, passing in the night, just sort of, you see someone on a retreat and you just acknowledge it. And then you keep doing the prayerful work that you might be experiencing in that moment. And so, yeah, I think that there's just something about the actual atmosphere that you've been able to help facilitate pretty well with the design and yeah, just the old bones of that beautiful house. It really is something.
Yeah.
Mm.
Of the Abbey of the Heights. It's such a incredible resource for obviously people in Tulsa, but even just regionally. We want more people to know about it.
Yeah, I do too. John, you mentioned that you had written a book here.
Yeah.
Mm. Do you want to share some more about that? Yeah, your book is called Leading by Listening. Well, who is that book for and what is it about and what were you kind of hoping in producing that?
Yeah. I was kind of in the middle of writing a very heartfelt book about, based on my experience in my master's, about how does God shape me when I choose to ask a question instead of give advice? What's happening in me when I do that? And in the middle of writing this book of like, how am I being shaped? I kept having this question of like, but how do people do it? Like, how do people practically do it? So I like set that other book aside and then picked up and then just started writing this. And I mean, it really flew by. I mean, it was based on some trainings that I've done. I've trained people on how to do this, and really my heart behind it has been, I want to give people a tool for better relational connection. The idea is using the posture of humility, and a learner coming towards someone is always going to let you connect with them better than when you approach them as an authority, like I know everything. So
Mm,
how do I do that? How do I approach someone as a learner? And so the book is sort of just like a little training guide on how to ask open questions, how to pay attention to body language, what sorts of, where to go in a conversation, how to use follow-up questions to get deeper. So really, it's a sort of a training experience is this little book. And my hope is that people who influence others read it. I really want people to be challenged by it. I think we've had enough of sort of the authoritarian leadership that says like it's my way or the highway, or are threatened by questions. Like that's a thing of like there's no life there. There's no future there. I think that what we really see people wanting, and when they go to work, when they go to church, when they come home to their spouse, is for someone to be digging deep for treasure. What were you feeling today? What was a highlight? What were you hoping to happen when you had that conversation with your boss? What are you going to do now from this point on? Just questions that sort of unlock each other. So yeah, my hope is anyone who feels kind of like they have people that trust them. I hope they'd read this and would be able to be challenged by the idea of like, okay, here's some really practical things I can implement tonight at the dinner
mm,
table with my family, or tomorrow morning when I see someone for coffee. Like this is something I can immediately plug in. There was one person who, when she read my book, like sent me a text and said, "Hey, I had to meet." She was meeting a refugee in her town for coffee, and she was like, we've had some good connections, but there's a lot of cultural differences, and I'm just trying to make this person feel loved. Well, I read the book and I decided I'm gonna keep my opinion to myself on a lot of things and just kind of try to ask questions and see where it goes. And she goes like, it was amazing. We went so deep. And she was talking about her heart, her longing for family, her hopes for the future, her pain that she's had and moving to a different country. And she was like, after like 45 minutes of just listening, asking questions, when we finished, this woman looked and said, I don't think I've ever felt love like that. Someone just listened to my heart. So
mm.
that's my hope, is things like that happen.
Yeah, man, that's a fantastic reflection to get back from something that you've created.
It was very encouraging.
Yeah, I bet so. I bet so. Yeah, I could imagine like I mean, I think about your book even when I'm parenting my 2 preteens of like how do I connect with them and engage with them and ask them questions that really do foster that and don't just get this, yeah, whatever, you know, those kind of responses that they like to give.
Yeah, I mean, we all get the one word answers, right? But yeah, it's just practice. I mean, I still almost every day will have a moment where I'm like, oh, I could have used a question there instead of a statement or an assumption or something. So I feel like it's a skill we all can grow in, you know.
Well, one more thing I wanted to make sure we had time to talk about some was about a year or so ago, maybe a bit more than that, the two of you approached me about something that you were involved in called the Shepherds Collective. Could you speak to some about that and what is the Shepherds Collective and what's the vision behind it and what do we do?
Yeah. Well, we have loved being a part of this group called the Shepherds Collective with Peter. We're actually a collection of ministers who actually engage in a whole different variety of ways with others. Most of us are not leading churches at this time, but we are engaged in vocational ministry that really supports other people in their journeys. So we kind of developed this organization. We gathered all the shepherds that we love and feel like are doing this really well. And we decided let's become a resource for others, particularly for other leaders who are in ministry. We wanted to create space and services and options for people who are shepherding others to be shepherded as well. To find safe places where they can bear their souls, where they can explore what God's inviting them into. So we really have a vision of cultivating relational, emotional, and spiritual wholeness in groups, organizations, teams, individuals. We have a knack for leaders. So we've we meet as a community actually for a relational experience, but then we also develop experiences for others, for them to taste and see that the Lord is good and to even explore what their own needs are around soul care and spiritual formation. So we actually at the shepherdscollective.org have a whole list of services that we offer: sabbatical coaching, spiritual direction, counseling, debriefing for ministers and missionaries. We've got quite a few really great resources and options for people if they're feeling like they're wanting something more in their spiritual life, or if they're feeling thirsty or parched in any way. Yeah, we'd love to connect with them. We also are available for groups. We love to kind of customize a group experience where people can really experience God and go a little bit deeper.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So we've hosted events for nonprofit leaders and for bivocational house church leaders, and yeah, and are looking for other opportunities to just come alongside and serve. I feel like I frequently will encounter pastors here at the Abbey who communicate something along the lines of a deep hunger for opportunities or spaces where they don't have to be in charge,
Yeah.
or they don't have to be the one putting it on or carrying the burden of responsibility to make something happen, but are looking for opportunities to receive so that they can give from a more healthy and centered space.
Yeah. And honestly, it's one of the main reasons that we get to see you on a regular basis, Peter. So for that, I'm really grateful. I'm so
Well,
glad
those
we're
are always good times. Yes. Yes, indeed.
I mean, really, something that I've seen over the last 17 years of working with Christian leaders is it's really lonely because people look up to you, and sometimes it can feel like it's hard to be honest about struggles. And I see spiritual direction as such a gift to pastors, for example, or ministry leaders who don't feel like they can let their guard down with a lot of folks, so that someone knows them, knows their story, is with them in the struggle. And I think even the Shepherds Collective is a means of that, because even us, like Bethany mentioned, we're all in different ways of ministry. And so if you've got tw 15, 20 meetings a week with people as a spiritual director, how many of those times fed and nourished you? There may be none of those. You still might feel the loneliness that you're watching a pastor deal with. And so I feel like the beauty of the Shepherds Collective is not only is it meeting the needs of folks outside the organization, but also it helps us care for each other. And so we're not alone in this work of caring for souls. And so yeah, I think even the nature of it is more relational and less like, let's go conquer our agenda and take on the world. It's much more like, how are we doing and how can we support each other, so that, like you just said, we can go out and care for others so that they can go care for the folks that they're invested in, and becomes really like a ripple effect of fruit. So yeah, it's definitely a gift for us.
Well, John and Bethany, thank you so much for this. This has been so rich. I've got a handful of questions here that I ask all of our guests, and these are just like lightning round, like top of mind answers. Don't think super hard about them. So, are you game for it?
Yes,
Let's do it.
you go first.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, Bethany, you can start. What's the last book that you read?
Okay. I last read a book called Yesteryear, and I couldn't even tell you the author name, but I literally just went to a book club on it last night.
For me, would be the last one I finished was probably a fantasy book, the Sorcerer's Apprentice or something like that.
Truth comes out.
And Project Hail
Fantastic.
Mary right before that. That was primo. That was delicious.
Nice. That's the next thing on my stack. I got it from the library, and I know there's like 100 people behind me waiting for it, but they'll just have to wait.
Yeah, it's worth it.
If your job was something different than it is right now, what would you want it to be?
I used to be a social worker working in child protection, and I've always considered becoming a licensed clinical social worker and being a licensed therapist. I'm basically, a few steps away from being a licensed therapist here in the US.
And Bethany would be a fantastic investigative reporter.
Oh yes. 100%.
She'd be fantastic.
That's my lost destiny, Peter.
Yeah. Or maybe a talk show
Or a
host.
prosecutor.
Or a talk show host.
Or a defense. I can never decide. Do I want the restorative justice elements in my life? Yes. 100%.
Excellent.
For me, what would I do? I don't know. I love what I do. I mean, I don't know. Actually, I have a dream of opening up a really delicious bistro and not being like having enough people work for me so I don't have to, live there 60 hours a week. Like I see all my friends in Tulsa who own restaurants often have to for the first few years, but I'd love to own a really great restaurant. I love food. I love hospitality, and I love going out to eat.
He's quite the food critic.
I am, but I'm fair. I'm not critical.
Not like you're
not overly critical,
but like you're always,
I'm like, this Taco Bell is terrible. Taco Bueno is so much better. Yeah, but at some stage, maybe that's my retirement. I'd love to own a yummy bistro.
A restaurateur.
Awesome. Is a place to travel that you've never been before?
Oh gosh, I have such a list. It'd be hard to prioritize. I want to go to Indonesia, Thailand, the Maldives, Turkey. Those are just a few off the top of my head.
I've been to like almost 20 countries and none of them in Europe. All Asia, South America, and Africa, Middle East. So I'm dying to go to Ireland, to go to Prague, to go, see Rome, see London, all of that stuff. So that would just be, I just need a good European experience.
Just the whole European tour.
Just
awesome.
Pack it all in there.
Yeah. Do you have a comfort food movie? As in like a movie you just watch 100 times, it never gets old, and it's just safe for you?
Home Alone. Every year I watch Home Alone. Very nostalgic.
Excellent. Yeah.
This is hard. I probably have like 25 to 30 of them. I studied film in college. I love movies so much. I'd say at the top of the list, though, would be Lord of the Rings is really just calming for my nervous system. I watch them every Christmas season for some weird reason.
That it has that impact.
Yeah, it does. It's like just this huge fantasy epic. And I'm like, so yeah, it'd probably be that, or maybe like Waiting for Guffman, or any of Bill Murray's movies, Groundhog Day or something.
Excellent.
There.
Excellent. So you mentioned food already. What's a favorite place to eat a meal?
Okay, let's see.
Yours is Roosevelt's.
There's a salad at Roosevelt's that I love locally. I also actually love even more this Thai chicken salad at Bar Sarah.
Yeah, Bars is cute. I would say food-wise, Lone Wolf, I love their food, and I love the man who makes them, an old roommate of mine. For comfort food, like I could eat it every week. Ricardo's. There's something about their very not Mexican food that I love, especially their queso. So,
what, you could eat it, or
I could do it.
Do eat it?
I eat there more than I should. That's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah.
What about you, Peter? I want to just know one thing. What is your alternative vocation? What would you do otherwise?
I would want to be a showrunner and writer of a TV show. So like I absolutely loved The Lowdown when it was on. That's kind of almost like it has everything I wanted in a TV show, because it was a love letter to Tulsa, and it was filmed in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so
have you seen Ethan Hawke?
Yeah, we have. Well, I have not. Jackie has seen Ethan Hawke, in kid picking up the kids from school. He was like in the parking lot.
Yeah.
But when Lost was a big thing, like I I listen to the podcast, like all the behind the scenes stuff of like how they wrote the episodes and all of that. Like I just ate that up. I would love that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
If we were going
That's
out to karaoke, what's your song?
Oh gosh. Okay. I don't know if this is my song, but I have sung it at karaoke before. You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. It just felt right. It felt right at the time. But that's not
Yeah.
what I necessarily go to. What about you,
Yeah.
John?
Mine are embarrassing. Probably you could just pick something from the 90s CCM catalog, PFR.
Go West.
Yeah, Steam Periods. Just pick a song from an album and I'd sing
King of the
along with it.
Jungle.
Yeah, all of it.
KING.
Perfect.
All of it.
Sometimes we
man.
have CCM, like musical lyric competitions,
To see who can
just like
remember.
going back and forth.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
embarrassing.
I could be there for that. Yeah. That
Well,
was my
you.
life in the 90s. Yeah. What makes you laugh the hardest?
Oh gosh. Okay, the hardest. I have this friend, her name's Nicole. We are old college roommates. We can really get each other going. Like, it's really weird. I'm only that way with her. We kind of will do a little bit of physical comedy. Like, we will really get into characters, and we can just laugh so hard together. So probably Nicole.
Mine would be a really, really funny show, like Arrested Development or something. I
Yeah.
can lose it. If Tim Robinson, any of his stuff, Detroiters, all that, I can just lose it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time today. This has just been a sweet and a rich conversation. If people wanted to connect with you about spiritual direction, maybe they were looking for a spiritual director and maybe they want to do a consult with you, do you have websites that they can find you?
Yeah, definitely. They can look up flourishdirection.com and reach us there. We have quite a few things listed there, and they can connect with us through that.
Yeah. Or even email flourishdirection@gmail.
Awesome. And are there other aspects of your work that people could connect with? I think you mentioned the website for the Shepherds Collective already.
Yeah, we've got the shepherdscollective.org. I also do relational restorative mediation with Olive Tree Mediation.net. Those are the main ones. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Again, thanks so much for taking the time to do this today. And thank you, listeners, for being with us too. You can learn more about the ministry of the Sabbath Life on our website, thesabbathlife.com. You can find information there about booking a personal retreat for yourself or for a group at the Abbey of the Heights. If you'd like to make a financial gift to support the ministry of the Sabbath Life, you can also do that on the website, thesabbathlife.com/give. We exist because of the generosity of people just like you. And then very last thing, be sure that you're subscribing to the podcast so that you're able to catch the next stories that we share. If you like what you're hearing, please also leave us a review so that others can easily discover us here on the interwebs. And you can help us spread the word about the Abbey of the Heights and a life of rest. Until next time, may you know in the deepest parts of your soul that you are God's beloved.